remembered to hit the record button, so at least we'll have the second half of the meeting on record. I'm going to call now on Ted Dahlberg. Got a Vexi bit for us.
Okay, can you hear me?
We certainly can hear you.
Oh, excellent. Hi from Philadelphia, and Happy New Year, everyone. This morning I wanted to share a fun flag and a gift that I received recently. It's the flag of Corsica. Corsica is a region of France located in the Mediterranean, and it's an island situated between France and Italy. And it's a smaller version of the flag. I'll raise it up for you here. It was adopted in 1755. At the time, the country was under the direction of Pasquale Paoli. He was
Ted, let me just interrupt for a minute for people who don't know. You can see it better if you'll go to speaker view. And Ted will be larger and you'll be able to see the flag better. Sorry, I just want to say
Okay.
that.
Great, thank you. And it was under the direction of Pasquale Paoli in 1755. Of course, the most prominent feature is the head of a Moor, and you can see that the Moor is oriented towards the hoist portion of the flag. An earlier version of the flag had the head appeared with blindfolded, but you can see that it now appears as a bandana on the head. The flag purportedly symbolized Corsica's liberation from Genoa, and it's very similar to the Sardinian flag. It uses the same image of the Moor, but that has 4 of the Moorish heads on the flag, and they are oriented towards the fly side. So I just wanted to share that flag with you. It has kind of a personal family connection. My mother and father lived in the Paoli area of suburban Philadelphia for about 50 years. I understand that there are 6 towns in the United States named after Paoli, I guess because of his representation of independence, kind of a freedom fighter. And my oldest brother is retired and lives in France, and he recently visited Corsica and sent the flag to me. So I wanted to just share that flag with you.
Good. Thank you very much. Anyone have a question for Ted about the Corsica flag? Okay, we'll move on. Al Cavallari's got a presentation of exhibit.
Can you enable screen share?
Okay, it's enabled. You should just be able to hit share screen.
All right, wait a minute. Okay, are you looking at a blue flag with stars?
We are.
So who can tell me what flag that is? This was a new flag to me, suggested by a customer. Anybody know it?
No.
Is it?
Is it Discount EU?
No. Is it evocative of any flag you recognize?
Al, is it the flag of the Continental Army? I saw it at the inauguration. I think
I did too.
With the fife and drum corps, the old guard from Fort Myers.
Yes, you did. Good.
Yes,
good.
I saw it too.
Yep, but this is a special version of it because it's a mistake, and it shows you how mistakes, despite the best of interest, work their way through to the final stage. So I made up a batch of these flags. In fact, this is what's on my website now. It needs to be corrected. There's only 12 stars. So I improved the artwork. I signed the proof at the factory and I miscounted the stars just like the artist did when she made it. I caught her mistake, but then it still wound up in the final version of it. I'll show you, wait a minute. Somehow you guys are, okay, I can't see there, okay. There's the correct version, 13 stars. So what's exciting for me about this is my two of my main interests in flags are historical flags of the United States and flag protocol. And many of the flags on my website come to me exactly this way. This is a flag I had never heard of, but I got contacted by an Army veteran who said, hey, I was in a special unit, has to do with George Washington, and I have two George Washington flags I have old George Washington page. And he is in that ceremonial unit, the very one that you saw marching in the inauguration. There's Washington's headquarters flag. Most people know that, and that's where the stars come from. But I'd never heard of this flag. Now, he calls it the Commander-in-Chief flag. It is now carried by the unit in their modern day name, and I'm going to read it because it's very detailed. He says, now their unit is called, it's officially titled Company A, 4th Battalion, 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment. It's the direct lineage to the unit created in 1776 by the Continental Congress that at the time started being called Washington's Lifeguard flag, or his His Excellency's Guard, things like that. Congress actually didn't like any of those kind of titles. The Continental Congress actually passed a resolution saying we don't want those kind of names being used, but of course the name was used anyway and it stuck. But I was so excited to hear from this guy. I'd never heard of this Washington flag, and I had only known that unit by this flag. This is the only flag I knew as the Washington Lifeguard flag. I didn't know they had a more modern version of a flag, and I'm not enough of a historian or a vexillologist to have delved into the difference, and he didn't know either. So maybe some of you guys do know, and this is why I say I like spending time with guys like you who know far more about flags than me, but this is what everyone knows as the Washington Lifeguard flag. And I don't know if it was one that was actually used during the Revolution or one that maybe was created afterwards for ceremonial purposes. But apparently it's not used now by the very unit. There's their flag and there's the unit. These are pictures he sent me to show them, to show me what the flag that he would like to see made. And I was very excited. I made up a batch of them, and it's going to be corrected with the right number of stars. But it's so fun to know about them. And I learned something else about military uniforms. Can you see my cursor moving?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these guys with the blue uniforms, those are the, I guess you would call them the weaponized members of the unit. Blue uniforms with red facings. The musicians, he told me, have opposite colors. So they have red uniforms with blue facings. That's just kind of a little protocol tidbit. There's another image of the actual unit in action at Mount Vernon. Of course, they perform ceremonial duties, as you saw in the inauguration. They march, they play music, and they do weapons drills and they charge and things like that. They're there in their fatigues. That was kind of cool, carrying their flag. There are videos of them. They have a Facebook page. You can watch them training. They train in fatigues, but here they are actually out in the streets. So I don't know if this is just training in the street or if sometimes they actually appear in their fatigues. I didn't get the sense they do. They are carrying their historic weapons there. And there's a wonderful image showing what I think I talked to you guys about last time, about that tradition that that the British had of actually laying their flag on the ground as a protocol gesture of dipping your flag. But these guys carry that on to this day. There's a British version of it at, I think that's Trooping the Colors, this big event. I think I talked about that the last time that we met together. So anyway, that's my Vexy bit to have introduced you guys to what will soon be the correct version of what the flag is called now, by the way. The guys in the unit call it the Commander-in-Chief's Guard flag. And they use an acronym CINC, Commander-in-Chief Guard. I don't know how they pronounce that. I haven't spoken with this guy. I haven't heard him pronounce it. So it's CINC. I don't know if they call it the Sync Guard or what they call it. if I have still a little time,
Not
are you-
really.
am I done? Okay, well, if we have time at the end, I've got some other things I want to show you. So that's that flag there.
Okay, thank you, Al. I'm sorry to have to cut you short, but we
Sure.
do need to move on because otherwise maybe next time we should call the meeting from 11 till midnight. I'm going to call on Connor Wright now, who has something to show us. Connor?
All right, thank you. Recently, for those of you who often like search the internet for flags, one thing they often Al, could you get out of the screen share, please?
I'm trying to do that. I thought Jack took it back.
No, I didn't. I'll try.
Oh, here it is. I couldn't get that drop down menu. Okay, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Connor.
so for people who have browsed the internet looking at flag designs like myself, one thing you may have come across is people redesigning flags, whether they're national or state or whatnot, and redesigning them based on forms of government. So I'll pull up an example right here. So I'll pull up an example right here. This Liberia, for instance, as you can see, it's got they've been redesigned based on multiple forms of government: monarchy, communism, Islam, fascism, and national Bolshevism. Believe it or not, mostly just because of the meme-ness of that particular one. So doing this and being a Maryland resident, I decided to do a version, do a similar style with the flag of Maryland. So as you can see here, this is the as we all can see here, this is the this is the irregular Maryland flag. Here we have the monarchy version. A lot of these get kind of based off the idea of like still keeping its statehood just under a new form of government, which is why you got the king's colors here for the monarchy, assuming that it was still under British control. Here we have the communist equivalent. As you can see, it's got the similar palisade imagery to the Calvert arms, with this time implementing the U.S. Communist Party symbol here. Yeah.
Are you okay, Jack?
Yes, why? What's,
Oh, no, your fascination with Maryland flag, that's why.
oh. Go ahead, Connor. Tom.
So yeah, this in order to help design this, I actually referenced the latest issue of Raven, the volume 27 of Raven, which had a prominent article about the Soviet iconography. Next we have there's the fascist version. As you can see, it retain a lot of these, especially like the communist version, the fascist version. They retain the Calvert colors, but not the Crossland cross because of religious preferences within the two ideologies. I did, however, retain the red and white here in the fasce. So, funny story about that. At one point, like I tried doing the sticks here red and the ribbon white, but when I did that, it kind of looked they looked like a bunch of sausages. And here is another version of the hashes. This time I tried using the referencing the German Kriegsmarine flag from World War One, a similar design. This time using the Calvert arms here in the corner, and in this case replacing the sort of eagle, or in the Third Reich case, the swastika with the cross button A. And yeah, that's all up. That's all the ones I have to display for that. Hey, for that.
Great. That's very clever.
I have a quick question. What software do you use? Because I'd like to create some flags of my own using some whatever software.
All of these were created with Adobe Illustrator, and all of them were using vector graphics, which I got from Wikimedia.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. Well, now we're going to move back to our longer presentations, and I'd like to call on Anthony Yasso. welcome back, Anthony. I haven't seen you
Thanks,
for a
Jack.
while.
Sure. Thank you. Well, I put this presentation together and expect there probably will be a lot of discussion maybe about what I present here, but what I wanted to, I don't know if can the group see my screen?
Mhm,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. So I wanted to walk you through some research that I've been doing surrounding a 12-star flag and the mystery behind the 12-star flag. And I've talked to a few people in the flag community about it, but I'd just like to share some information about it and kind of get some ideas from the group. But this flag I acquired for my collection a while ago and was fascinated with it from the first time I saw it. I noticed when I first saw the flag that it was very early wool bunting and had whip stitch grommets, single applique stars, and 12 stars. It was an intriguing flag because after years of collecting, and those of you who've come and visited with me and know the collection I have for American flags or been to the Rare Flag site, that I have a wide range of American flags that go all the way back to, the earliest flag was a 15-star flag in the collection. And so it kind of gives me a good idea roughly of the ranges of where a flag might be from an age perspective. And this one was particularly fascinating. When I took a closer look at the flag, one of the things immediately is that it's made entirely with linen stars and linen thread. And those of you who know Grace Cooper's book, she talks in there a bit about the use of linen in the earliest American flags. And in doing research, and there's a lot of information about the advent of cotton, the period at which cotton exports from the United States increased, the Luddites, and obviously their battle against mechanized looming and the cotton industry in England is well documented. But the earliest flags, American flags, likely had linen for their stars and for their thread, which is a characteristic of this particular flag. And a closer look too, the linen stars and the hoist have the same colorations, and it's different than the 20-star flag that I have in the collection. And the star linen is approximately 50 threads per inch, which is consistent with the high end of linen weaving in colonial America. You notice from this research, a view of linen weaving in 18th century America, and you can see that it's a lot of words here, but the three A, B, and C are the linen gauges that were likely produced in the colonies. This is referring to Pennsylvania weavers. You notice number C is around 50 threads per inch. And then D is Scottish linen, which is the finest available in the 18th century. And that really approaches 90 threads per inch, which is an amazing level of fineness for linen. But the stars of the flag consistent with C, which is approximately 50 threads per inch, which would have been available in the colonies at the time. And another thing that was interesting about the flag is the use of this hand-loomed wool. And you can see this very irregular woven wool. And there's these reinforcing strands that run through the flag yarns, the reinforcing yarns every few rows. And you can see a good example of that in this close-up of the canton of the flag. The hand-spun yarn, all wool bunting used in American flags prior to the Civil War was imported from Great Britain. And the flag wool has the qualities of the earliest hand loomed wool that date at least to 1810 or prior. So if we compared the flag to another well-known benchmark flag, and this is one obviously that is in the Zaricore collection, Howard Mattis and others had looked at this flag in person and examined it prior to it being procured by Ben Zaricore. is the Sandy Point Lighthouse flag. And the attributed date is in the 1789 to 1795 time frame. And if we take a closer look at that, we can see very consistent construction between the 12-star flag on the left and the Sandy Point Lighthouse flag on the right. In the quality of the wool bunting and the characteristics of its the way that it's woven, the looseness of the weave is one example. And you can see very irregular hand woven rather than machine woven wool that differs from other flags that I have in the collection that are later period, even though they're circa, you know, the 19-star flag is also very coarse wool. The 20-star flag is more irregular. One of the things I've seen in the earliest American flags is this kind of creamy white wool, and it's more of an observation, but in the mid 19th century American flags, the wool of the white sometimes is almost like a grayish cast to it, or perhaps a beige cast to it. You see that particularly in Civil War period flags or later period flags. But there's a set of flags that I have been able to bring into the collection that are the earliest flags that have a it almost looks like the color of your creamer when you use it in your coffee in the morning of the wool. It's a very fine, high quality wool in the white, and it has a particular look to it. And you can see that in the two flags, and also notice the weave of the flags and the use of linen thread. And also the single applique stars. You can see this, apologies for it's a little blurry in the left picture of the 12-star flag, but the use of single applique, now that continued into the 19th century and well into the 19th century. So it's not an indicator of it being particularly early, but the characteristics of the flag star construction, as well as a very early hand spun wool, is very different than other single applique flags that I've seen from the later period in time. You can see again on the Sandy Point Lighthouse flag, very similar construction on the right hand side. And then the seams, the flat fell seams that were used on flags, especially flags made out of this very, very early wool bunting, have a very irregular, crude look to them. You can see a close-up of the flag in the Zaricore collection on the right, the use of a dyed thread. And I've talked to other collectors have talked about the fact that the brown thread likely is originally a blue thread that was dyed with a fugitive dye that's turned this kind of brown coloration. But again, very similar as far as the construction of the two flags from that period. Well, what other flags could we use as a benchmark to compare? One of the things that's interesting is one of the earliest flags, I think it is the earliest British flag in the British collection at the Royal Museum in Greenwich, is this flag, which dates to 1794 and is associated with Richard Earl Howe in his fleet commander role, and dates to at least 1 June 1794 and likely earliest. So in researching the flag, I reached out to the British Museum and established a correspondence with them to take a look at the wool bunting in this flag versus the wool bunting in the 12-star flag. And they were very kind to send some images that are not published images of wool at that time, because, as I mentioned before, wool from this period in time would have been imported from England. And the flags would have made of similar wool. And so if we take a look, this is an unpublished shot record from the British Royal Museum that shows a close-up of the periodic tight warp sections. And you'll notice that, again, in this flag, compared to the 12-star flag, these sections of wool where the threading is very close together. And there's also evidence in some of the wool that was used in the battle flags from Trafalgar and some other early British wool, that the technique of bringing these threads together periodically through the weave was done intentionally to keep the flag lightweight, but also very strong. And so we see some similarities in the weave. We also see consistency between the two flags and the weaving of the wool, as far as the overall irregularities and the construction of the wool for both of the flags. So this is another benchmark comparison. A lot of times people say, well, you know, this could be a later 19th century flag because, but in visual examination of the flags, and you can see on this screen, these are these flags are in my collection. The 12 star in the top left is clear, is a later 19th century Civil War to probably 1870s flag. It's single applique construction. It's made out of wool bunting. It has very large stars, and you can see but clearly the wool and the characteristics of the flag are different. And also you can see a 15-star flag, which is a 19th century 15-star flag, and a 16-star flag that are later period in these star counts. And the flags that are down on the bottom row, including the 12-star on the left, the 15-star flag in the center, and the 20-star flag on the right, are much more consistent with each other in terms of the wool, the construction, the overall look of the fabric of the flags, with the exception that the two on the left, the 12 and the 15-star, are linen stars and thread, and the one on the right, the 20 stars, which is dating to about 1818, we finally have cotton stars, which is consistent with what we see also on the Star Spangled Banner, which is cotton stars on wool bunting. But why 12 stars? And this was an interesting question. The evidence from the fabric and the construction of the flag is that it's a federal period American flag. But why would you have a 12-star flag during the federal period? And this set me into a bunch of research on what was going on in the country at the time. And I think it's a very interesting line of research. So from 1776 to 1781, and I'll just paraphrase what's on these slides because they're a little bit busy. But we know that the Articles of Confederation were being drafted after the Declaration of Independence for the perpetual union of the United States. But during that time, in June of 1777, while they were still being drafted, Congress passed the first Flag Act and establishing the 13 stars and stripes as a flag of the United States. And the Articles of Confederation were actually not ratified until March of 1781. So nearly 4 years went by from the time that the Continental Congress passed the Flag Act to when we actually were organized as a country of the United States under the Articles of Confederation. And in 1783, the Paris Treaty ended that, and the states really entered a little bit of a disarray period as far as what the strengths of the federal government were. We had to pay our debts back from the Revolution. There were strong issues such as taxation and also protection of personal rights. And that later led to what became the Bill of Rights. But these were very contentious because they weren't really captured sufficiently in the Articles of Confederation about what the federal government could do and what was the responsibility of the states. And so by 1786, they were unable to really pass the measures that they needed in the country to raise the taxes to pay off debt as a country. And Rhode Island in particular was very adamantly objected to the power of the federal government and states' rights. In fact, they refused to send delegates to a meeting that was called in June of 1787 to revise the Articles of Confederation, and only 12 states were represented at that time. In 1787, the reviewing body of the Constitutional Convention determined that the Articles of Confederation just were not going to work, and they transitioned to becoming the Constitutional Convention to draft the Constitution. And Rhode Island still did not send delegates to the Constitutional Convention. In fact, they didn't attend the Constitutional Convention. They didn't attend the signing ceremony, and they were not a signature. They were the only one of the 13 states that did not sign the Constitution of the United States. And during the Constitution, they had to work out how things would transition from the legacy Articles of Confederation to the new United States Constitution and government under the Constitution. So it was determined that once 9 states ratified the Constitution would come into effect. And the states began holding their ratification conventions to discuss ratifying it. Even still, in March of 1788, the Rhode Island voters overwhelmingly rejected the United States Constitution. By that time, 6 states had already ratified the Constitution, and everybody was eagerly watching around the country to see this process as it unfolded, and each new star came into the country's constellation. And you can see here, this is a newspaper, the Massachusetts Sentinel from 1788, that was tracking almost on a weekly or monthly basis the establishment of the pillars of the federal government. And this was a cartoon that they used, that they updated, that tracked as we went from 5 states to 6 states to 8 states to 9. And finally, their last cartoon was 11 states. And you notice at the top of the pillars, each state, a new star coming into the Union. And you notice the proclamation on the bottom right that 11 stars in quick succession rise. And of course, the pillar over on the very far right is Rhode Island, which is still a crumbling kind of mess, and North Carolina, which was still also resistant to ratifying the Constitution. In 1788, upon ratification, the United States entered into a weird position from a flag history perspective, and I think it's unlooked in a lot of the materials. And for those of you that are on later, I'll be asking just for more info that you might have on it. But the government of the the Constitution was not instantaneous. They said that once the Constitution was officially adopted in June of 1788, it wouldn't be until March of 1789 that the official governance under the Articles of Confederation would end and the Constitution would come into effect. In between the 9th ratification, Virginia and New York ratified in 1788, but the 2 holdout states of North Carolina and Rhode Island had still not ratified the Constitution by the time the Constitution came into effect. And so the first government of the United States of America under the Constitution was just 11 states. On March 4th, 1789, the first United States Congress convened, and this was the date that they had set for the changeover of the government of the United States. And notice in the quote below, I just highlighted some highlights that say that on the evening of the sunset of March 3rd, the old Confederation was fired out by 13 guns. And in the morning of Wednesday the 4th, the new era was ushered in by the firing of 11 guns to honor the 11 states that adopted the Constitution. Rhode Island and North Carolina were now severed from the American Union, and they were as independent of each other as England and France. And you note the quote in the bottom that sea captains, said a Providence newspaper, belonging to the state will sail under the sole protection of the state of Rhode Island, having no claim to the flag of the United States, for the 11 Confederate states are in fact the United States. George Washington was elected February 4th from just a slate of electors from 10 states. New York failed to field the electors, and North Carolina and Rhode Island hadn't ratified. And so he was inaugurated on April 30th as president of just 11 states. And there's firsthand description of Washington's journey from Mount Vernon to New York, where they observe things such as 11 colors being planted on the north side of a bridge as he crossed the bridge at Gray's Ferry. And also that a ferry barge you can see in the bolded section there was flying a jack, which would be just the canton of stars, with just 11 stars on it. So you can see that at this point in time, even during Washington's procession to New York, that the number of stars on the flag began to change from 13 to the actual Union that was represented. So what do flag references say about this? Well, it's a bit spotty, but you can see that some of the flag scholars and some of the flag books mention this period in time, although it's a bit brief. But they highlight particularly that firsthand observation of the 11 stars on the jack at the bridge at Gray's Ferry. And in general have stated that there were flags that were made during this period of time with less than the full number of 13 stars. In fact, you can see some of the bolded quotes here were 9 stars immediately after the ratification in New Hampshire, and many flags with 10 stars were displayed during a Philadelphia exit celebration following the ratification of the Constitution. This is in Willis Fletcher Johnson's book. We also see from Henry Pribble's book the observation of the 11 stars on the ensign on the American Jack when Washington was going to New York, and other citations here from different flag books that I was able to locate, just describing 9 stars and 9 stripes, cases of 11 stars, cases of only 12 stars when only 12 had ratified the Constitution. And I'm sure there are more, and I continue to look for other firsthand sources referencing the number of stars on the flag. So was the 12 stars on this flag a mistake? I don't think it's likely. You know, folks like Anna Hoskins and Betsy Ross and Mary Pickersgill, who were early flag makers, they knew what they were doing when they were making these flags. The flag itself is very well constructed. It's from an experienced seamstress, and they actually have space on the flag for an entirely new star without even nesting them together. If I just do a cut and paste of one of the other stars, I can drop it right onto this flag in the position of the 13th star. And you can see the way that the flag maker had gradually moved the stars in the center column to the right to allow for a 4-5-4 pattern, which is a prevalent pattern for 18th century 13-star flags, along with the Hopkinson pattern, but didn't put the star on the flag. And you can see I just put on the right-hand side there some of the details from Grace Cooper's book about the details that the flag makers, like Anna Hoskins, kept as far as the precision of the materials that they ordered, the cost of the materials that they ordered. It's very unlikely that they would make a flag for somebody and that they would say, you know, what happened to the other star that's supposed to be on this flag right now? It likely is intentional. And so in conclusion, in examining this flag and based on the flag's construction and the fabric style and star count, my conclusion on the flag is that it likely is a 12-star flag from the period of between the ratification of the Constitution by North Carolina in November of 1789 and the ratification and of the Constitution and joining of the Union of Rhode Island in May of 1790 during Washington's first term in office, but after North Carolina and prior to Rhode Island joining the Union. And that concludes my presentation.
Wow, that was incredibly educational and fascinating, Anthony. Thank you so much.
Wow.
And we can entertain 2 or 3 questions. In the interest of time, we're going to have to move on. Let me see. Tom Carrier, you have your hand up.
Just a quick thing. I'm not understand. Oh, first of all, that was way too fascinating for words, because I had not ever heard of that kind of thing before, especially with the unusual number of stars. But I was to understand all along that there weren't any 13-star flags that survived the 18th century, but now you're telling me there are quite a few.
Well, I think that there are none that I think are documented to the Revolutionary period, to the first Flag Act of 1777. I think in general, there's a feeling that there are a few that are date to the federal period prior to the second Flag Act. And what was interesting is that if you read the first Flag Act, they state that the flag of the United States is 13 stripes. Then they say it includes a union, which includes the stars for the union, and the union changed during that period of time. And so you're correct that there likely aren't very many. There probably are a small handful, and just in the study of this flag, I believe that it's probably likely the earliest or one of the earliest Stars and Stripes flags in existence. So,
anybody else? Al.
I missed the size. How big is it? He's muted.
You muted, Anthony.
Oh, sorry. It's a relatively small flag. It's probably about 3.5 to 4 feet by 2.5. I don't know the exact measurements, but it also is interesting because if you notice in that one slide for Anna Hoskins, they described the flag that she had made for the military department. That was 1801, and it was for making one ensign that was 3.5 feet long by 6 feet fly. So it was a relatively small flag too. This flag is a bit smaller than that, but it's about the same size also as the 15-star flag that I showed in the presentation.
That's great. Thank you very much. And we're all looking forward to getting back to Middleburg someday and
Yes.
seeing more of your collection.
Thank you.
Have us over again.
Yeah.
We'll do. We'll be
Oh,
able
yes.
to see that flag when you come out. So
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yeah. So talking about collections, we're moving on to our other prime collector, Nicholas Artimovich, whose home really, although it looks like a home, it really is a museum. So Nick, you're on.
Let's see if I can be successful in sharing my screen. Let me see, what do we got here? Oh, that looks good. Come on. Aha. Okay, are we on board?
Yes, we are.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, well, when Jack asked me to show a few items from my collection, I decided that if I was going to do a show and tell, it'd be appropriate to focus on current events and show how flags got us there. But I'll begin with a photo that I received this week from my friends at Dixie Flag in San Antonio. This week, we watched the inauguration of the 46th President of the United States. Swearing in was held at the U.S. Capitol, which was festooned with huge American flags. The two outside flags, I'm talking about the flags near the top of the image. The two outside flags have the so-called Betsy Ross pattern of 13 stars. The central flag is the current 50-star ensign. The other two have 13 stars arranged in the Francis Hopkinson pattern, representing the president's home state of Delaware as one of the original 13. This flag display has been provided by Dixie Flag since the inauguration of George W. Bush. Now, the use of the American flag in presidential campaigns and inaugurations, of course, is not new. This view from a stereopticon slide shows how the Capitol was decorated for Teddy Roosevelt's inaugural in 1905. Especially noteworthy because I think that was Bernie's first inaugural. In this presentation, I'd like to show how the stars and stripes have been used and abused by presidential candidates through the 19th century. We can trace the use of the American flag at least 180 years to the first active presidential campaign of 1840, which pit the incumbent Martin Van Buren, a Democrat, against a Whig candidate, William Henry Harrison. Van Buren unfortunately suffered from the financial collapse of 1837, and Harrison was portrayed as a frontiersman, a man of the people, as well as the hero of the War of 1812, Battle of Tippecanoe. The slogan, Tippecanoe and Tyler too, helped put Harrison in the White House. And campaign brooches, like this one showing a log cabin, a barrel of hard cider, and the American flag flying boldly were popular. This Whig Party campaign print shows William Henry Harrison greeting a wounded veteran before a log cabin by a river. The cabin flies an American flag with the words Harrison and Tyler, and with a Liberty cap on its staff. The 1840 campaign was the first to use names, portraits, and slogans placed on the American flag itself. Here's a close-up of the Harrison and Tyler flag. Most of the Harrison campaign flags that have survived are smaller, about the size of a large handkerchief. Now, here's another variation of the Whig Party campaign brooch, one of the early forms of campaign buttons. This one is hand-painted, I believe, on ivory, and like the campaign print, shows Harrison welcoming a veteran with our flag flying over the log cabin and barrel of hard cider. The common pinback campaign buttons we know today were not produced until the 1892 patent for celluloid. The campaigns through the 1840s and 50s continued the use of the stars and stripes, including the Know Nothing Party, which was opposed to foreign influence, including the influx of foreign immigration. The anti-immigration movement eventually helped the Whig Party transform into American Republicans, as seen on this Eagle and Canton 26-star silk ribbon. President Millard Fillmore, president from 1850 to 53, was a follower of the Know Nothing Party and was the last Whig in the White House. Democrat Franklin Pierce won the election of 1852 and was celebrated by this Charles Magnus print. It features portraits of all of his predecessors and the American flag on the top right. Interestingly, it includes a presidential flag on the top left, long before either the Army or Navy specified a particular color or ensign to the commander-in-chief. Now, I believe on this print, it was erroneously hand-colored red, as all surviving presidential flags from the 19th century, at least the naval flags, were blue. By 1860, the dissolution of the Whig Party in America had become an accomplished fact, and Whig politicians, former free soilers, and populists from the Know Nothing movement flocked to the banner of the fledgling anti-slavery Republican Party. Now, in that year, the Republican convention in Chicago that nominated Abraham Lincoln for president used flags to demark the delegations. These two examples feature a wonderful great star pattern, but the Massachusetts example has 31 stars, while the Maryland delegation's flag has the correct number of 33 stars for that date. Once nominated, Lincoln's image was used on patriotic envelopes with flag motifs, and election tickets for Lincoln were awash with the red, white, and blue. Some of the 1860 covers feature a beardless Lincoln portrait, and the same print blocks were used 4 years later by the addition of a beard. Now, these three silk ribbons are generally associated with Lincoln's 1864 campaigns, when support for the human and monetary cost of the Civil War was waning in the North, and the Republicans appealed to the voters' desire to support the Constitution and preserve the Union. Lincoln campaign flag banners are among the most sought-after flag collectibles in the country. This printed cotton flag, measuring 11 by 17 inches, was formerly in my collection. The unique pentagon pattern of the stars, totaling 33, and the misspelling of Abraham are characteristic of a number of these flags that were part of a fantastic patriotic quilt that was auctioned in the late 1980s. It was purchased by a small number of dealers who connived to pool their resources and subsequently each get some of the flags, which included Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant portrait flags. I bought this one from one of those dealers about 1990 for the huge sum at that time of $2,000. In 2001, it sold at an auction in New York City for a hammer price of $15,000, and my profit helped my daughter in her first year of college. Now, this smaller silk fringed flag with a bearded portrait of Lincoln is unlike any other campaign flag I've seen. It could be from as early as Lincoln's 1864 campaign, or maybe for his 100th birthday celebration in 1909. I've only seen that integral silk fringe on flag ribbons from the 1880s, and I'll show an example of that later. Collectors do need to be careful when looking for Lincoln items, as some very questionable items are out there. Here's a flag I purchased a number of years ago. I was suspicious of it, but I paid less than the undefaced 13-star flag of this type. The rubber stamp or crude stencil legend of Lincoln and Union was very likely added to the Civil War period flag in the 1960s or 1970s. Now, it was during the American Civil War that the American flag became the predominant symbol of our nation. However, no more so than after the surrender of Robert E. Lee and the fall of Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy. Victory will lead to peace, and Richmond has fallen were the cries of the day. Sadly, less than 1 week later, the same printers were producing mourning broadsides honoring Abraham Lincoln, shot by an assassin in Ford's Theater. The small paper flag on the right is printed in red and black in mourning for the late president. God's illustrious servant, and we mourn our martyred president, were frequent sentiments seen in the northern states in late April of 1865. These small paper broadsides measure no more than 3 or 4 inches long, but were enough to express the grief of the nation. Now, after Andrew Johnson completed the remainder of Lincoln's term, Civil War hero General Ulysses S. Grant was elected president in 1868. Clearly, here was a man who fought for the flag. These 2 election ballots, or tickets, strongly associated Grant with the Stars and Stripes. Grant was known to oppose the use of his name or portrait on the American flag during his campaign, and he probably did not give permission to Peckham Stove Company of Utica, New York, to use his image on this advertising trade card. Now, Grant served 2 terms and chose not to run in 1876, the year of our country's 100th birthday. The centennial year saw a virtual explosion of patriotism, and the American flag was used in countless ways to celebrate our 100th birthday. Perhaps because of this, the contest between Rutherford B. Hayes and Samuel Tilden in 1876 had relatively few campaign items featuring stars and stripes. In 1880, however, the flag reappears, especially in advertising. These trade cards carry the portraits of Republican candidate James Garfield and the Democrat Winfield Scott Hancock. It appears the Providence Furniture Company did not want to lose a good customer, so they were ready to support either side. And the printer was more than happy to provide these advertising cards to anyone willing to order either or both, whether you sell blankets, newspapers, or books. 4 years later, the election of 1884 pit Grover Cleveland against James G. Blaine, and portrait flags were again popular in various sizes. And as the reverse of this card says, there are portrait flag banners for both Cleveland and Blaine, and also for their running mates. In 1888, Blaine wanted a rematch with Cleveland, but the Republican convention decided that Benjamin Harrison was a better choice to go against the incumbent. This puzzle game implied that Blaine was the favorite for the presidential nomination because he had already gone against Cleveland once, that Harrison might prevail as a Republican candidate. Now, Grover Cleveland and his running mate, Alan G. Thurman, appeared in numerous campaign items, including cigar boxes, silk ribbons, and miniature paper flags. Both candidates used the American flag, and Cleveland's platform supported tariff reform and implied that China supported Benjamin Harrison through his policies. The Harrison platform favored high tariffs that supported American industries and protection for the American working man. Protection to American labor and protection versus free trade and waving the flag were integral parts of Harrison and Morton campaign, as these silk and cotton bandanas show. Harrison took great advantage of the American flag, as much, if not more so, than any other presidential candidate. In 1888, this was successful, as Harrison and Morton beat the incumbent Grover Cleveland. The Harrison and Morton ribbon, second from the right, has that same integral silk fringe, similar to the Lincoln flag I mentioned earlier. For the campaign of 1892, Benjamin Harrison selected Whitelaw Reid of Ohio as his vice presidential running mate, still running on the protection platform. His opponent was again Grover Cleveland, this time with Adlai Stevenson as his running mate. Now, this time, Cleveland beat Harrison and returned to the White House to become the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms in office. This ribbon from the Cleveland-Stevenson inauguration featured an American flag defaced with the Tammany tiger, a surprising acknowledgement of that corrupt New York City Democratic machine, Tammany Hall. In 1896, the American flag was again extensively used in the campaign, with these items supporting the winner, William McKinley, over William Jennings Bryan. The 2 pics on the right show a small pin in the shape of the American flag, but this flag is spring-loaded, and when you open it up, you see the portraits of McKinley and his running mate, Garrett Hobart. McKinley's campaign manager was the shrewd Mark Hanna, who created a Flag Day just ahead of the election to show the country how important their policy of sound money, protection, and prosperity was. And if money didn't move the voters, then maybe patriotism would win the vote. McKinley was immensely popular after leading the country through the Spanish-American War of 1898. And in 1900, New York State politicos in Albany saw an opportunity to send their irritatingly honest Governor Theodore Roosevelt to Washington, D.C. as McKinley's vice president. Now, this umbrella, or parasol, shows both McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt, along with the stars and stripes, in a great square and circle arrangement of stars. Now, these 2 small broadsides are indicative of a major change in how the flag was to be used in the 20th century. In some of the more raucous campaign rallies in the latter third of the 1800s, the flags bearing names, slogans, and portraits of the candidates were caught up in the damage and destruction by voters supporting other candidates. This desecration of so many American flags angered many, especially the surviving veterans of the Civil War, who fought under their regimental colors with their battle honors bravely painted on the stripes. Now, this defamation of the flag led to many states enacting laws prohibiting the use of flags in that way. This eventually led to the U.S. Flag Code, written in the 1920s, which specifically prohibits placing anything on the flag. Also, by this time, celluloid buttons were becoming one of the more preferred modes of expressing one's political leanings, thus closing one chapter in the history and use of the American flag. Okay, Jack, that's what I have. Let me stop sharing here. All right. Are there any questions?
That is, Nick, just very, very much fun to see your collection and the breadth of things that you've got. A lot of people are applauding you, as you can see.
After collecting for 50 years, you tend to find a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's lucky you bought that big house all those years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Just a quick question. Is all those pieces that we saw, Nick, is that from your personal collection?
Everything, like I said, except for the photograph of the Capitol, it came from Dixie Flags, and that Abraham Lincoln Hannibal Hamlin flag, which I sold at auction in the about 2001.
Yeah, I haven't been to the house for a while. Is there a way I can move in?
Well, we do have a spare bedroom since both kids are out.
For those of you who know Pete Vanderpoot from Dixie Flag Company, he's just now recovering from COVID. He's been quite sick. He had gotten his first vaccine and then went to a New Year's party, and he and 15 members of his family all have come down with COVID.
Jack, there's some questions.
So let's see. Al Cavallari's got his hand up.
Yeah, so I've been aware that Dixie supplies those vertically hanging flags for the inauguration, but does anyone know, or do you know, Nick, do they reuse them each year, or do they make new ones every inauguration?
Well, I had thought that they would have saved the old ones and reused them, but Vanessa Vanderpoot has a short video about those flags, and she's standing in front of a new 50-star flag, and it looks like she's referring to making a new set of 5 flags for this particular inauguration. So I don't know what they do with the old ones.
Yeah, that was my impression too from seeing the video, was that they were all made new. Betty, did you have a question?
Yes, I noticed on the National Mall, there were how many thousand flags? Where did those come from?
Valley Forge.
Wow. Did they lend them, or did they?
Oh, no. I happen to know because I'm a Valley Forge dealer. Valley Forge sold them to a large company that does giant mass events, so if whatever you need grandstands, a gorilla, whatever flag, right. They go out and they do it. And yeah, it was a big deal. He told me how many, I think they were 4,500 3x5 nylons and that many poles and untold thousands of stick flags. And yeah, it was and all very quick.
Wow, it was so impressive.
Yeah. It was near 200,000 small flags on the sticks, apparently, along the mall. The question is, what did they do with the flags?
I could see a great fundraising effort to sell those. I would buy one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly the number of comments I was seeing when I was reading it on the Washington Post was exactly that question. Where do we get them? What are they doing with them? And where did they go?
Now, mind you, I don't know that Valley Forge did all of them. They did all kinds of American flags, but then when I watched it on TV, I noticed there were all those stripes of yellow, all those rainbow colors.
Those are state flags.
Those are state flags.
Well, I think it was more than just state flags, because there'd be a whole band of yellow.
That was a whole band of New Mexico flags.
New Mexico, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They had, I think, about 100 of every state, maybe more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that large US flag that was supposedly seen from space, what was that made of? Does anybody know?
I don't know. And I don't know that that was Valley Forges. That must have been one of those, because there's these companies, one of them's here today, who our friend who has a giant flag, but there are,
Josh, do you know anything about it?
maybe he's gone. I don't
Josh
know.
may be gone.
But there are companies who have big flags like that in stock, and they come out and they set it up for the day, you know, or they rent them, they ship them to you. So
Yeah, Josh is gone.
and those are in pieces, by the way. They put them together, you know, when they get there.
Okay.
Very
Nick-
interesting. So now our next presenter is John Riley. He's new to CBFA, and as he told us in his introduction, he is from the Freedom Flag Foundation, and he's going to tell us about it. John?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you got some
Super.
screen share?
Yep, let me get that fired up here. Okay, can you see?
Not yet.
Still no? So I'm using PowerPoint. I launched the projector before I shared. Is that the right way to do it?
If it's up on your computer screen, you should be able, then it should share.
Did he press the screen share button? Can you tell?
Let me try again. Stand by.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Share screen. Screen 2.
Did Nick give up the screen share?
Share. Here we go.
There you go.
Got it?
Perfect. We got it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. My name is John Riley. I'm the president of the Freedom Flag Foundation again, and this is an overview of the history of the Freedom Flag. It's a 9/11 flag of remembrance, and the goals of our foundation to see it become a symbol of remembrance for 9/11 across the country. So I'm going to clip through a lot of pictures, going to go pretty quickly and try to keep us moving. So the Freedom Flag is Virginia's official flag of remembrance for 9/11 as codified in the Virginia Code, section 1-510. To our knowledge, it's the only codified flag of remembrance for 9/11 in the nation. To set the stage for the meaning, I have to take us back to that fateful day, almost 20 years ago. It'll be 20 years this September. So everyone probably remembers exactly where you were, what you were doing, how you heard about the first tower. I got a phone call from a friend because a mutual friend of ours was working in the Trade Center at that time. And so I knew I might have a personal connection. When the second plane hit, I think we all knew this was no mistake or accident. This was a terrorist attack. The Pentagon in Arlington County, Virginia was then hit. I'm about 90 miles south in Richmond, and there were threats down here that our Federal Reserve building might be hit, and the governor's mansion and the Capitol area was under lockdown here in Richmond. And then we all know what happened in Shanksville as Americans figured out what was going on and started to fight back. So in a matter of just over 90 minutes, the towers fell, and we knew that things were not going to be the same. Certainly patriotism surged. US flags were everywhere, bumper stickers, flagpoles, bridges. And Americans in general said, we will never forget this day. We will always remember what happened. And that became sort of our promise. So historically speaking, 2,977 lives lost. It's the deadliest terrorist attack ever. The highest single day death toll from an act of war in the US since the Civil War. So more lives lost than Pearl Harbor in terms of single day death toll. There's an incredible global impact. I prepared this slide after some research last summer, realizing that 90 nations outside of the US lost a citizen on 9/11. These are the flags of those 90 nations. And my personal connection is one of my best friends was killed at the top of Tower 1, Doug Ketchum. And that's a longer story, but the Freedom Flag and my involvement has really eclipsed his story. He was at the top of Tower 1, Cantor Fitzgerald, got one phone call out to his mother, and that was all we heard. So last time I saw him was April 2001 in my wedding. So what is the freedom flag? Well, it has 10 elements, red, white, and blue, same colors as the US flag. The top red stripe stands for the lives lost at the Pentagon, 184 lives, including those on Flight 77. The broad red stripes represent the Twin Towers and the bloodshed there and the 2 planes that were crashed. And over my shoulder, you can see when the flag is turned vertically, the red stripes look like the Twin Towers. 3 white stripes represent rescue workers, fire, police, Port Authority, and all who ran towards danger and worked tirelessly afterwards, including the 343 fire department of New York personnel who were killed. Bottom red stripe represents Flight 93 and the bloodshed of the crew that took over the plane from the hijackers that was crashed in Pennsylvania. The 5 white bars represent the Pentagon and the organized protection of our freedom. And it was very interesting earlier to hear that there's more than 5 branches of the military, but symbolically, we have the Pentagon on our flag. And the white star represents all who lived and died for freedom. And lastly, a snapshot in American history where we were perhaps as united as we've ever been as Americans. The blue field represents all Americans united together for freedom, sort of the September 12th state of America, if you will. So it's been almost 20 years, and it all began with a sketch on a napkin by a Richmond restaurant owner, Richard Melito, who was the son of a school teacher and the brother of a Vietnam vet. He saw what Vietnam did to his brother and how forgetting and mistreating those who'd served caused a lot of suffering unduly. And he was very clairvoyant into the future, recognizing the historic nature of what had just happened. And literally about a week and a half after 9/11, he sketched the flag on a napkin. And today it's in 49 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And we'll probably check North Dakota off the list here pretty soon. And this is Richard Melito with the very first freedom flag that he hung in his restaurant. His intent was when people came in and saw the flag, which it's sort of ironic that he checked off all the boxes of good flag design. There's no words. It requires people say, what's that flag, to understand it. And he felt like his role as an American would be to do his part to never forget. He would explain the meaning of the flag just as I did, and he would be done. Well, lo and behold, educators and citizens wanted that flag, and it soon spread across Virginia to almost every school division within a couple years. And it spread across the country. Here's the freedom flag, the 9/11 Virginia freedom flag, flying at the Shanksville Temporary Memorial. And within 2 years, Governor Mark Warner, who's now Senator Warner, recognized the freedom flag as Virginia's flag of remembrance for 9/11. A lot of folks outside of Virginia don't realize the Pentagon is in Virginia, which makes it such a unique part of Virginia history. And a lot of news coverage ensued. So one of our big pushes is flag protocol. So we have a written protocol to fly the US flag always above the freedom flag and fly the freedom flag with deference to other official flags. Here's a couple examples. The display on the left is at the Virginia Governor's Mansion when Governor McAuliffe was in office.
I'm the president of the National Union.
And here's a freedom flag that Governor Kane donated or dedicated to the Virginia State Police on the 5th anniversary.
Let's start in our classic section. There,
I think somebody's needs to mute.
humor from the world's oldest joke book,
Can you hear me?
Philogilus. Enjoy another classic work.
We can hear you, John, but
Okay.
somebody else.
Country Mouse in the
I'll
City.
keep going. Somebody needs to mute
Bring on
their
our own history.
their audio.
That's how we talk in the United States.
So
Emerging language.
this is our
Emerging American Language 1812 exhibit. You can learn about Noah
Greg,
Webster's
right?
creation of the first.
Greg Nedved, could you please mute yourself?
Moving ahead in time, you can explore.
There we go. Okay. Still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is our board. We have a nonprofit board that was formed to help with the distribution of the freedom flag way back about 19 years ago. This is all volunteer organization. We run on passion. Here's a few shots. I took notes earlier of where everybody on this call is from. Here's freedom flags displayed in the various states Delaware. There's one from Maryland, one up at Massachusetts, Homeowner, New Jersey, Ground Zero in New York, Virginia, Washington, D.C. That's a special flag with some of the names of the students from Washington, D.C. who were killed in the planes on 9/11. So I'm going to pivot for a second because education is one of our big initiatives. And a few years ago, almost 10 years ago, we took ownership of a piece of World Trade Center steel from Tower One. It's a very incredible special artifact, 3,000 pounds of steel. And it happened to be just by kind of dumb luck that it came from right where my friend worked. Doug was just above the impact. And we decided to go into the school system here locally, noticing after about 10 to 15 years, kids in high school had no working memory of 9/11. So we combined the freedom flag with a hands-on project, including World Trade Center steel and magazine articles, and started seeing if it would work in the schools to help kids better understand this piece of our history that was sort of quickly fading. And it worked out great. And since that time, we've actually written a book about this story. One of our board members wrote Unfurling the Freedom Flag, which is available on our website. And we're trying to use that book and the steel and the flag to educate the next generation of school children about what happened on 9/11. And so we have a national program that we're rolling out. We've piloted it in 3 states. Here's the flag at the flagpole, and here's our steel in the classroom and the books. So a little bit of the educational piece. The colors of the freedom flag are the same hues as the colors of the US flag: white, Old Glory red, and Old Glory blue. And again, the protocol, we try to roll in that protocol and civics with what we do. So today we're in 49 states, DC and Puerto Rico. That means just at least one flag documented to those states. There's not necessarily a major presence, but we're working on that. Here's a picture from 9/11, the 15th anniversary in Richmond at a 9/11 stair climb. And here's an event we did, a COVID event with ROTC from a local high school in the outskirts of Richmond. That's another event up in Stafford County, Virginia. Here's an elementary school in Poquoson. So how did we get into the state code? In 2018, with a groundswell of support from educators, we decided to do a bipartisan bill with Republican and Democrat legislators here in Virginia. And they introduced the flag of remembrance of September 11th, 2001 to the state code. And it was approved unanimously, 97-0, after a lengthy process through subcommittees and back and forth to both houses, a few edits, and finally it was done. So we became, 3 years ago, the first official flag of remembrance in any state code. Here's a ceremonial bill signing. That's me on the far left. Standing next to me in the black suit, kind of the bald head, that's Richard Melito, the creator of the flag, and several other members of our board and surviving families, along with the governor. And we raised the flag on September 11th, 2018 at the Virginia Governor's Mansion. It was quite a moving experience. So today we're using the freedom flag as sort of the baseline for teaching about 9/11 in other states. I mentioned the 3 states that we piloted this steel and freedom flag program. This is in Sugar Land, Texas. A friend of mine who I grew up with and who knew my friend Doug, she agreed to take a piece of steel and the freedom flag and introduce it to her classroom in Sugar Land, Texas. And the quotes really tell us to keep going with what we're doing. History coming alive in my classroom. We have the definition of vexillology in our book. So the first time I ever heard the word vexillology was during our Senate subcommittee hearing when we were introducing the bill. And I think that's an important word for kids to know. So that is in our book. This is another one of our teachers in Delaware. Again, another quote with the steel and the freedom flag. She said after introducing it to her students, "For the first time ever, I think my students understood it all and felt what really happened on 9/11. So today, there are over 50 million school children in K through 12 in the United States. So that's quite an audience. That's our audience to reach. And these are some pictures from around Virginia that we pull from social media. Every year I sift through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram to try to see if anybody flew the flag. It's hard to keep up with, but there's lots of great illustrations. So how do we become a national symbol? Well, serendipitously, we ran into Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger about a year ago at the Virginia War Memorial expansion. She's located here in Henrico, former CIA, very passionate about social studies and history. And she helped us introduce House Resolution 7183 last year, a bill to make the freedom flag the federal symbol of remembrance for 9/11. And it would go in the US code right alongside the POW MIA flag. And this is actually the only picture I have of all three flags, US freedom flag and POW MIA. So I included that here. Last year was a tough year to do anything in Congress, understandably. So HR 7183 unfortunately sat in committee and stayed there. And it has either expired or is about to expire with the new Congress coming in. But that was sort of an important milestone, and it told us that we're doing the right things and to keep up the hard work. So this year we have a national freedom flag raising program. Along with the international aspect, we're emphasizing to handle with care. We don't want this flag to become a symbol of one side or the other. It's got to be bipartisan. It's a flag for everyone. And it's about telling the history of our country. It brings together a wide range of interests. I'm an Eagle Scout. My son's in Boy Scouts. So you've got some scouting up here. Obviously education, Americanism. We're working with American Legion Auxiliary. First responders, very passionate about what happened on 9/11 and remembering, and our military as well. So kind of a Venn diagram where all these things intersect. The freedom flag has a little piece for everyone. And these are just a few more pictures of flag raisings. So for any of you who are trying to do something big, maybe you're writing a book, maybe you're launching a new initiative, our 6 ingredients for success are to keep persistent and stay focused, keep telling our story with these kind of presentations in our book, keep pushing our unique educational initiative. The flag by itself plus the steel plus the book is really a neat combination. It's very simple. Social media is our friend for the most part, trying to get the word out. Bipartisan support, very important. We don't want this flag to be the flag for one party or the other. Absolutely not. It's all Americans united for freedom. And then local and national partnerships. So having access to NAVA and learning how others are using flags and learning about flags has been greatly beneficial to our organization. And as the president, I try to take all the info back that I see and hear from you all and share it with our group. And that is, in a very quick way, the story of the freedom flag. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate learning about this educational endeavor. And it is hard to remember that it's been 20 years already, and there's already now a whole generation that doesn't have September 11th as a defining moment in their personal American history. Yeah. Are there any, if you'll stop the screen sharing, are there any questions for John? Anything to say? Well, we are officially at the end of the meeting, but I know there were a couple of you who had Vexy bits, and if there's people who can stay on, were there some others who I missed on the Vexy bits? Oh, hearing none others, Al, your hand's up. You're muted. Okay.
I said I've got some additional things I'd like to show besides what you saw that are different Vexy bits, if you've got time.
Okay, just let me check. Betty, you've got your hand up. You have something to show, or do you have a comment? Betty?
I have a little something to show.
Oh, okay. Al, I'm going to let Betty go first. I'm going to let Betty go first and then you. Okay. And anyone who has to leave, thank you so much for coming, but we'll hang around for a little bit and chat if we've got time.
So,
Betty.
Sorry, the microphone came loose. This little item I just picked up recently at an estate sale, and I just thought it was kind of sweet. It's just a little booklet, and I'll put the writing right up to the camera here. It's a Stars and Stripes, published by a little pharmacy in New Jersey in 1973. And it's pocket size, about the size of those little constitutions. It's kind of nifty. It tells the history of the American flag. And most of the information in it is relatively current. I mean, it's all current up to the minute. They say that Betsy Ross was a legend, and they do give Frances Hopkinson credit.
Wow.
Probably, they say. And it's, you know, nicely illustrated as these little pamphlets go. I just thought it was kind of neat. And, oh yeah, list the states in order. Anyway, I just thought it was kind of a neat little thing. And next time we meet in person, I can pass it around.
Well, increase your ephemera collection. Yes.
Yeah, I
Very
just
good.
try to deaccession it to people who have actual collections.
Okay, thanks, Betty. Al, you've got a
Yeah, by the way, somebody was here from Bordentown, New Jersey. Is that person still here? Home of Frances Hopkinson, by the way. So,
isn't that
Yeah, I'm still here. This is Desmond.
yeah, Desmond.
yeah, she mentioned Frances Hopkinson. So yeah, I visited his home as a law office, and they'll let you into the lobby to look at it.
Yeah, it's right on a very historic intersection in Bordentown City. There was a few really historic houses there, so it's still there.
Yeah, well,
Now-
this was
Now the 20
published-
was in
sorry.
Trenton, and the hotel, the venue was actually in Bordentown.
So yeah, this was published by Palumbo's Pharmacy in North Wildwood.
So I'm going to screen share. Can I do that?
Sure, go right ahead.
How many of you knew that? Well, everybody knows about the new Mississippi flag. How many of you knew that New York has a new flag? Anybody? Christopher, do you know what's new about it?
Excelsior.
Yeah, we've added the state motto. There you go. Okay, are you seeing the New York flag?
We are.
Yep. So right underneath the Excelsior, well, that's not what's new. The Excelsior always was there, but they've made room for the motto "E pluribus unum." That's a favorite of our governor's, and that was finalized. He signed the bill in April. I'm glad there. Oh, just to show you though, this is one of his recent news conferences. And he's
It's not
still
there.
using the old flag, and I admire his fiscal responsibility. They're going to use up all the old flags in their stock before they go to the new ones. I'm glad the protocol people are still here. There's that space flag, like we were talking about. They've squeezed it in right after the Air Force instead of putting at the end of the line. This was during the inauguration at Arlington. There it is again, the Space Force in its pecking order right after the Air Force.
And it really does look black, doesn't it?
Yeah. What I am intrigued, this is kind of the Biden press secretary's first press conference, kind of as an example of not great flag etiquette. They've got the US flag kind of stuffed behind the sign. And I'm not picking on the Biden administration. The Trump administration did that all the time too. That sign that they use to project things on, see it right there. Sometimes though, the US flag for whatever reason is not out front. Here's Kayleigh McEnany coming in for her press conference. And it's behind the sign also. It's kind of not a great graphic. The one thing I'm hoping somebody here can tell me, I don't have an image of it. Wait a minute. They were saluting Biden before he was sworn in. Now, I thought the military doesn't salute civilians, and until he's sworn in, he's not the commander in chief, right? But yet they were saluting him as he arrived for the ceremony. I think I had no, I didn't get that shot, but did anybody else notice that? And what is it with that? Does anybody have a response of why they would salute him a half hour before he's sworn in?
He's an ex-vice president.
Say again?
He's an ex-vice president.
Yeah, but do they salute ex-vice presidents?
I doubt it.
I would doubt it too. I think they only salute a civilian because he's the commander in chief.
I think they did it out of courtesy as opposed to military custom or military need. I think it's just a customary kind of thing to do.
I guess
at the time.
I suppose, yeah, but there must be some kind of protocol.
Unless they were just saluting the flag.
No, they did it to him. I mean, if you go back and see he comes out of his car and he starts walking up the steps and then they all salute. It was clearly to him.
I was watching C-SPAN and watching the former President Bill Clinton and so on coming down the stairs to enter where the inauguration is going to take place. And one of the things I noticed was that Bill Clinton and George W. were in fact saluted by the Capitol Police, but the Bidens and the Vice President-elect Harris were not saluted as they were coming down the stairs to enter onto the inaugural stage. And I thought that was interesting because some of the military did salute them before they took the oath. That's right. So I'm just guessing the military who were doing it weren't clear on the concept and thought it was just a courtesy.
Now, one other thing I wondered, and again, we had two protocol people here, or this is more a legal question. So the outgoing president's term in the Constitution ends at 12 noon. Biden is sworn in like 10 minutes of, I watched the clock. So does that mean for 10 minutes, for 9 minutes, we had two presidents?
No. The Constitution is specific to 12 noon, even if he took the oath of office at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
It doesn't say.
I believe the analysis of that I saw from constitutional scholars asking that very question was basically the handoff, given the wording in the Constitution, is at noon, and the new president isn't allowed to actually execute his office until after he has taken the oath. The fact that he took the oath before noon simply means he could actually start being president at noon. If he delayed until afternoon, there would have been this weird thing where he was president, but he couldn't really execute his office yet.
Okay,
But
so
the fact they do it early is of no consequence.
So if they needed to launch the missiles at 5 before noon, they would have needed Trump to do it then, right?
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
Here's something else though too, was that when Obama took his first oath of office and was given by the Chief Justice, the first time they did not do it correctly and had to redo it the next day.
He flubbed it.
They didn't have to redo it the next day. They just did it.
They just thought they would. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention. I'm a graduate at West Point, and I wanted to mention with regard to saluting that we very often saluted old graduates and retired generals. When I was there, General Schwarzkopf came back for a visit. We did many marches and parades where retired classes would come back to the academy, and it was always protocol for cadets to salute old grads and retirees because they still maintain their rank in retirement. And we, like I said, we were always taught that old grads and retired military officers would be saluted for as a point of honor.
So is that something that you know to do as a matter of course from the training they've given you, or do they take you aside and they say, today a retired general will be here, we're going to salute him, so that you know to do that, or do you just know to do that?
I think that they know to do that, but if like Colin Powell or somebody were to come and visit as a retired general, that he would receive a salute regardless of the fact that he's a retired general. Colin Powell, he still maintains a retired rank and would be saluted by troops in that forum. He wouldn't just troops wouldn't just let him walk by without rendering a salute.
Well, as a general, aren't generals even in retirement still considered flag rank and can still be saluted anyway?
Yeah, and well, that's why I think too, with a commander, former commander in chief, they would be saluted by natural order of course there.
Sure.
Al, this is Stan. I can tell you that at least in the Air Force, it's official policy. But in the PR, personnel regulation world, if you are retired, regardless at what point, you're at whatever rank you retired at. I'm trying to remember if it was Anthony that mentioned it or someone else. You're still that. Like, I'm still a colonel, and I still get called that. Everything on my paperwork, every time I go to a base or what have you, I'm still a colonel. I'm just on the retired list. So.
Okay, so anybody there who happened to know you were a colonel would salute you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Even when I go on base and I, show my ID card to get through the entry controller, whether it's a civilian guard at Quantico or an airman at an air base, they still salute me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, understand that I'm a former 82nd Airborne paratrooper E4. And if you're not, if I know you're an officer and don't see you in uniform, I'm not likely to salute you anyway.
Yeah, must be a service difference, because in the Air Force, if you know the person and you're the enlisted member, even if you're not in uniform, the enlisted member salutes.
Right, the Army's weird.
No, I meant if you were no longer active, I think is where I was going.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
If
Air Force is different.
Yeah, if you're no longer active, then the salute is not, as far as we know, necessary.
I'm going to ask the military protocol to be taken offline to see if anyone else has got some flag stuff to talk about.
Very curious, though. Yes, thank you.
Thank you all. Anyone else got something flaggy to say?
Oh, yeah.
Yes?
I was meaning to ask, is Connor still here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I never heard what that flag was behind him that he had.
I think that's one he designed for Catonsville.
That's his town where he's from or something?
That's where he lives.
Okay.
Hey, Jack, I've got a question for Al. Is one of the pictures he showed in his presentation.
Go ahead.
Okay. Al, the graphic that you showed of the Commander's Guards flag, the one that has is it Victory or Freedom handing a flag to Washington?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It looks like the flag that she's handing him is that round circular
Good point.
star flag.
Yes. Oh, yes. Right. Now that you mention it. Yeah.
I didn't know if that was I seeing that correctly or?
Well, no, you are seeing it correctly. It sure does. Yes, I've looked at that myself and said, look, there it is right there. And
it struck me just because it was funny that she's handing him a flag that the Guard itself should be using, and yet they have their flag is a picture of him being handed a different flag.
Clearly, the circular star is not something just from the last 50 years. It's something that is contemporary, at least to that other flag that was more. It's more like a painting. It's got so much stuff on it.
Right.
Yeah. Good point.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
If I could chime in about that flag, first of all, it's almost definitely post-revolution. And second, I believe that the original flag is at the Masonic Memorial in Alexandria. I believe we saw it when we were there for our ICV meeting.
Art Etchell's making a comment. There are cavalry flags and there are infantry flags, and the graphic showing the person handing the flag seems to be handing that to a cavalry officer, not an infantry officer. So there may be two flags, one for the mounted regiment and one for the foot.
Peter, what did you say that flag was?
It's a post-revolution commemorative of some kind. There's quite a bit of literature on it.
But you said it was a copy by Masonic, or where was it?
No, the physical flag itself is at the Masonic Memorial in Alexandria.
Masonic, okay.
Yeah, where we had the ICV in 2011.
Right. Thank you.
Peace and freedom, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you for all your work, Jack. And these are just wonderful.
Jack, thanks so much.
Nice job.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good to see
Great,
you all again.
great to see everyone.
Great to see you guys. Bye, everybody.
Almost like being in the world again.
It won't be,
Bye-bye.
we'll make it. We'll make it through.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
See you all at the next one.
Thank you.
Nick, are you okay?
I'm fine. Yep. Just
You sound
wait-
like you have a
waiting.
cold. No, sounds like
Oh.
you have a cold.
Slightly, just getting over it.
Okay.
But, just to be sure, we're my wife and I are getting COVID tests tomorrow at the local CVS. So
I, you
Very
know, anytime I itch, I go for COVID test. People get saying, sneezing is not a symptom of COVID. And I say, I know, but I want to be tested.
Yeah, we
I've
got to
had
do it.
4 negative tests.
Oh my.
I
it's
live
great to
with
s-
anxiety, boy, and someone we know was exposed 2 days after we saw her while everyone was wearing masks. And he wanted us all to get tested. I'm like, she was exposed 2 days after. So we all agreed that I could get tested. And if I was negative, he would stop worrying. So yeah, I had a negative test. And I had another negative test because I had some lung function test. And you're going to be breathing heavily in their office. So you're going to get tested before you have this test.
Yes.
So
yes.
I've been negative twice.
Are you going to work? Are you going physically
Yeah.
into the
I'm
library?
working exactly where I'm sitting today.
Completely from home.
I've been working at home since March.
It's almost a year. Wow.
No,
Yeah.
I'm good.
almost, yeah.
I'm gonna hate it when my commute stops being 10 steps and starts being an hour again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I really live 12 miles from the capital. It's just it takes me an hour to get door to door.
Goodness.
got a second? Can I share a picture of a piece of folk art that I have?
Please.
Can you share that? Let's see. Here it is. No, open up. There. This is a weather vane, at least
Oh,
parts of a
neat.
weather vane.
Oh.
The arrow, the star, and the of course the vane itself is an American flag. And I think I got a close up here. Yeah.
Where did you find that?
Yeah,
Actually,
that's unusual.
Oddly enough, on eBay,
Oh.
and it's 44 stars. So this is early 1890s,
Hmm.
and that it looks period to me. I understand it came from the top of a barn in upstate New York, but I've always wanted to have an old flag weather vane and was able to come across this one.
Always? Have you really?
Yeah, it's not something I've always dreamed of.
I mean, I thought about, we got to hang out with Nick more often. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. Just wanted to share
Thank
that.
you.
Nick, was that ever painted?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Anthony, I've not forgotten our conversation about eventually publishing your 12-star flag work.
Sure, Peter. Yeah, I appreciate that. I've been continuing to do research, and if anybody also, I know that a lot of folks have quite a deep library on flags, much deeper probably than mine. And if anybody comes across information on that really short period there, and finds reference to flags during that period, that would be fantastic. And I also, it's hard to do research with COVID right now, but
Oh, yeah.
I continue to look for some new